12 CR 1522. The record should reflect that Mr. Holmes is present with his lawyers, and the prosecutors are present as well. I have a question form submitted by one of the jurors. It's juror number 155. It's not a question, but I'm going to mark it as question form number 42, which is the next number in terms of the question forms. It reads as follows. Suggestion for monitor use. Attach a second mouse to the computer that the witness can use to point to the pictures. Change the mouse pointer to a larger one. The witness can look at his or her screen and use the normal microphone. So I read it. I'm not going to...
It's a good suggestion. I thought about it, Your Honor, but I thought it was too complicated for us to handle.
We're gonna build a suggestion box. All right, you ready for the jury?
I am, Your Honor.
Okay, let's bring him in, please. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that the jury has joined us again. Welcome back, everyone. Mr. Orman, before the break, you were in the middle of your direct examination of Special Agent Gumbiner, and so you may proceed with the rest of your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Special Agent Gumbiner, in a minute I'm going to ask you about a conversation that you had with the defendant, with Detective Apple being there in the afternoon of July 20th. But before we get to the recording of that, I want to ask you about a portion of it that occurred before the recording, because when we hear the recording, you'll hear that it sort of starts in the middle of discussing, or near the end of discussing, the items that we had seen in the doorway. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I want to ask you about the little bit of time before that. Did he discuss with you, the defendant, did he discuss with you what that was in the doorway?
Yes, regarding the booby trap, he did.
Did he tell you what the liquid was in the thermos?
Yes, he did.
What was that?
Glycerin.
Did he tell you what the black powder was in the frying pan?
Yes, he did.
What was that?
Potassium permanganate.
And as a person, an explosive bomb technician, does that mixture do anything?
Yes, it does. The mixture, if you mix those two ingredients, if you mix the glycerin with the potassium permanganate, you get what's called a hypergolic reaction. Potassium permanganate is a water filtration crystal that's utilized quite a bit here in Colorado. Glycerin readily available at any Walgreens, CVS. If you mix those two, it creates this reaction. It's almost like lighting two sparklers on the 4th of July. You're going to get an extensive amount of heat. You're also going to get sparks and a lot of fire if those two ingredients mix. And that's what he had right at the doorway.
Before we get to the recording, do you think it would be helpful for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury to see some photographs of what was inside the apartment, and so that they can have a context of what is being discussed?
Absolutely.
And if I showed you some photographs taken from near the doorway area of the apartment, could you tell me whether they fairly and accurately depict what was present inside that apartment on July 20th, 2012?
Yes, I could.
And by that apartment, I mean the defendant's apartment on Paris Street.
Yes.
May I approach with what I've marked for identification, Your Honor, as 4138, 4143. Actually, I'll go in numerical order. I had sort of rearranged these. 3951, 4138, 4143, 4144, 4145, 4146, 4148, 4162, and 4163.
Yes,
Thank you. And I've shown these to counsel during the break, Your Honor.
thank you.
Take a look at those and tell me if they accurately depict what was present inside the defendant's apartment on July 20th, 2012.
Yes, they do.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of 3951, 4138, 4143, 4144, 4145, 4146, 4148, 4162, and 4163.
Any objection? Without objection, People's Exhibits P-TR-3951, 4138, 4143, 4144, 4145, 4146, 4148, 4162, and 4163 are all admitted and may be published.
Thank you. If we could please put up first 4138. Now, we're looking through the apartment door, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, is the thermos containing the glycerin still present when this photograph was taken?
No, it's already been removed.
But is the pan that we just discussed with the potassium permanganate in it present?
Yes, it is.
And we can see, did the defendant discuss with you those those soda bottles on the floor behind the chair?
Yes, he did.
And so when he talks about the soda bottles, where would they be in this picture? You can show us.
So these would be the Sprite bottles filled with gasoline inside his apartment.
Okay, if we could now go to 4144, and if you can just stay there. You'll hear at some point in the recording the defendant talking about making napalm and putting it in some jars with some bullets. Can you please point out where those are so the ladies and gentlemen of the jury can see that?
Sure. There were 3 jars that he filled with napalm. You can see 2 of them in the picture here. One large jar on this chair and one large jar on this chair. And in the bottom of the jar is the napalm the defendant put in those jars.
And then he also, I think, in your discussion, talked about putting some thermite that he'd made on top of those jars, just so the ladies and gentlemen of the jury can see, where is he talking about there?
Correct. You can see on top of the jars there's a half shell. Inside this shell is improvised thermite, and right underneath it is smokeless powder that he had placed in the jars.
If we could please move to 4145. Would that be a close-up of the middle jar? I don't need you to describe it, just tell me if that's what
Yes,
that
it
is.
would.
And 4146, please. Is the jar on the right, can you see that in there?
Yes.
And where is that?
Right here.
3951, please. And is that the third jar that you were talking about?
That is the third jar on the TV stand. Correct.
At 4148, please. What is that a close-up of?
That's the close-up of the potassium permanganate that was in the frying pan.
And then you can see a white powder on the floor, but I think we can see it better in the next picture. 4162, please. And you see a sort of a white powder on the floor there in a zigzag pattern?
Yes, I do.
And I think the defendant talked about that. Did he talk about that in the video? I'm sorry, in the audio?
Yes, he did.
What did he call that?
Ammonium chloride.
And then if we could actually stay with that one for a second, I think at some point, does the defendant talk about placing air fresheners in the apartment?
Yes, he did, to mask the odor.
And can we see those?
To mask the odor of the gasoline.
And can we see those in there?
Yes, right here. And you also see 2 additional ones on the floor and 1 on the chair.
Okay, thank you. We don't need to show any other photographs at this time. Thank you. I want to now ask you about the recorded conversation with the defendant. When did that occur?
In the afternoon of Friday, July 20th, around 3:45 p.m.
Do you recall where?
at the Aurora City Jail.
I'd like to ask you about the demeanor of the defendant when you and Detective Apple were speaking with him. What was his demeanor?
He was tired, soft-spoken.
Was it similar to the demeanor of other people that you had spoken to in investigations involving explosive or incendiary devices?
Objection, relevance, foundation, speculation, 403.
Why don't you approach? All right, the objection as to relevance is overruled, but the objection as to foundation is sustained. You can establish further foundation.
Thank you. Special Agent Governor, in your time as a FBI Special Agent bomb technician, have you had the opportunity to interview suspects in cases of suspected explosive or incendiary devices?
Yes, I have.
How many times do you think?
Multiple. I couldn't put a number on it, but
More or less than 20?
less than 20.
More or less than 10?
Probably less than 10.
How many do you think?
I would say 6 to 7.
6 to 7. And when you observed the defendant's demeanor, was it similar to and I'm only asking you about the demeanor, was it similar to the demeanor that you had observed in other suspects for explosive or incendiary devices?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you what has been marked for identification as People's Exhibit 1023A and 1023B. What is 1023A?
It is a CD containing the recording of the interview.
And apart from some portions that are hard to hear or inaudible, is that an accurate and fair representation and recording of the interview that you and Detective Apple conducted with the defendant?
Yes, it is,
How do you know that?
because I listened to it.
And how do you know you listened to it?
My initials are on it, as well as the date.
Thank you. And take a look at the B portion of that exhibit. What is that?
It's a transcript of the interview.
Have you looked at that transcript?
I have.
And have you actually made changes to it to make it accurate?
Yes, I did.
And as far as you can tell, is that transcript a fair and accurate representation of the words that are spoken on that recording?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this point, I move for the admission of 1023A and 1023B.
Any additional objections to 1023A and 1023B?
No further objections.
Without further objection, People's Exhibits P-TR-1023A and 1023B are admitted pursuant to my previous rulings.
Your
And
Honor,
so,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Orman, would you, are you intending to publish these exhibits at this time?
I am, Your Honor.
All right, with that then, members of the jury, I'm going to give you a cautionary instruction, and if you would hand those transcripts to my staff, please.
And for the record, Your Honor, I have 24 copies that I'm going to hand to your staff.
Great, thank you. Before you do, let me give the jury a cautionary instruction. Members of the jury, the transcript that has been submitted is to be considered as any other evidence. You are not required to accept this document as an accurate transcript of the recording. Rather, it is up to you to assess the accuracy of the transcript. After you listen to the recording and review the transcript, you can accept all of the transcript, part of the transcript, or none of the transcript. You are the final judges of the contents of the recording. Does everyone understand that? And everyone's nodding their head yes. Great. With that then, Mr. Orman, you may tender the transcripts to my staff, and Ms. Gerlings will then distribute them to the jury. And you're not asking that my court reporter take down this recording, correct?
I'm just asking to play it, Your Honor.
Okay, great. Yes. Give me just one moment, please. Does everybody have a transcript? Does anybody not have a transcript? No, nobody's raising their hand. Okay.
Your Honor, I don't know if the jury needs to be instructed if they're allowed to take notes on these individual copies. I hadn't considered that, but it just occurred to me.
These individual copies that you have, actually, would counsel approach briefly? Members of the jury, at the end of the playing of the audio recording, we will retrieve your individual copies of this transcript. I have admitted the transcript into evidence, but your individual copies of it will be retrieved, and so don't take any notes on these copies. If you want to take notes in your notebooks, okay? All right. With that, you may publish Exhibit 1023A.
Okay, well, on the sneakers, on the black sneakers.
It's blue.
Okay. Is there a line running from the back of that to the chair? Is there something else that's running there?
No, the whole thing is just, it's supposed to be in force, so you can send everybody to the theater or whatever.
Okay.
So it's to the music play really, really loud so that would get people to call. Right. And get the forces to go there.
There was I think the neighbor went over your place around midnight. So, James, help me here. So the plan was, as a version, that's fine. What's going to set everything off? The tripwire, is that going to set everything in the apartment off? Or how is everything set to not so much detonate, but start the inferno?
Will the fireworks remote system, the AV and C and D, it has all the wires going in on top of the fridge.
Right.
And you guys disable that already?
No, we haven't done anything.
Did you get the transmitter?
Where's the transmitter at?
Garbage bag also with the music thing, so the music would go off and then people would go to the garbage bag by the dumpster and then they're putting an RC car in there. They put the transmitter on top of the garbage bag so that they could see the RC car and try and play with the thing. So then they press the transmitter buttons, and that would set off the fuses to just the gunpowder gasoline mixture, which might set off the lights in the middle.
Is that within that hole?
There's, the in that corner of the hole.
Right, yeah.
And then I also signals on top of each one of the shelves of the pickle jar. That way it would go through and then down to the plant. And then the magnesium ribbon from the middle mortar pedestal thermite.
There's magnesium in there too?
I had 2 magnesium ribbons. One is one that I chopped up into flakes, I guess, and spread it around so if you spray water on it, and then scoop shit up.
So magnesium is and then you crunch some of that out and spread it out?
I'll just cut it. I didn't powder it.
Okay, so you just crunch it.
It's flakes of ribbon. Yeah.
And that was magnesium ribbon, right? James, that you crunched up and sprinkled throughout the
Yeah. Not throughout, just in that
main room?
there. Everything's right there.
sure you guys assist the ammonium chloride, which produces a lot of smoke with it.
And then the air fresheners out with the map here, correct, all the Christmas trees, no big jiggy big hang from everything here.
Yeah, so they would come and because they smell gasoline and pretty much run.
So those are around the light bulb, what is it, chemistry name for it, the pedestal, whatever. That's the filament, right, that's in there?
Or the residues of the
Yeah, it must burn, correct. So, James, the little black, these are about like mortars that are around that bowl, right? Those little black balls?
It's all still weird versions of this plastic. There's 6-inch, around 6-inch plastic shell in there, and has gunpowder, 3-inch shells, which stick into the water guns, usually going into the gunpowder shell. They really doesn't have a bigger 6-inch filled with gasoline and motor oil, but they won't snap shut. Citizens are like pressure. Yeah, they would pop because they're plastic.
So what is it? Anything?
By now, they probably leaked out all their gasoline and popped out. So, and then all the ones on the wall and nothing in there.
I didn't see one on the wall yet.
They're just plastic shell.
Okay. So the 6-inch ones had gas in them on the floor,
They did, but they popped and
I'm sure.
yeah.
And then the 3-inch ones had black powder smokeless. Okay. All right, so that's, now let me ask you this, James. You talked about leaving those up in the dumpster.
It's not in the dumpster. People will always leave their trash outside the dumpster.
And so that's where you left it?
Behind the dumpster from the view, I guess, from opening it. Near the Mexican restaurant side.
So if I'm looking at the dumpster straight on, is it to my right or my left? What do you think?
If you're looking at it straight on,
none of it's timed, so none of it's going to go off without someone hitting that button, is basically what we think, right?
Timing was supposed to be the music, so that it got the people there and it got the whole shindig. We're ready to put that in.
So let me ask you this, James. There's an ammo can in your bedroom. What's in that?
Stuff that we're around. There's no,
So there's no explosive hazards?
no, there's nothing in my bedroom that's, or kitchen. Well, there's the remaining gasoline in the gas tank, which should be safe.
Where's that at?
In the kitchen under the microwave. That's just stored gasoline.
But you're saying there's nothing in your bedroom?
Yeah, in the bathroom there's the blue torch on top of a mag hole, yellow mag, some like propane tank thing, but it's not connected to anything. It's just,
So it's a propane tank,
it's just a blue torch that's just sitting there.
and that's in the bathroom?
Yeah.
And you're saying it's gas and all those 2 liter bottles. Is there anything in the kitchen that's an explosive or incinerating hazard? Did you put anything in the kitchen?
No, I don't think I left anything.
Okay.
It wasn't,
And you just put, now the firing box that's above the refrigerator with all the wires going to it?
yeah, talent clips.
Right. Is that attached to any remote, or is that?
That's the transmitter.
Okay, so that's the receiver.
The transmitter goes from the dumpster when somebody goes to play with RC car or whatever,
Right.
and then it's off the receiver on top of the fridge.
And the 2 little boxes that are in the main room with the lights transmitter that was outside. Is it missing, or?
You tell me,
Well, I haven't been, I would leave that for running, it could still be there, we did do a search, we didn't find it. Hey, James, real quick, the gasoline and the ammonium chloride, well, the ammonium chloride is being sprinkled on the ground, right?
the white powder in the front, that's supposed to just make smoke.
If what? If you hit the flame, or?
Yeah, that one's plain.
Okay. And then, so distribute the small little 3-inch balls.
Those are halfway filled with smokeless powder.
And with a fuse going into it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and that fuse is attached to,
Receiver on top of the fridge.
and the 6-inch balls.
And it's supposed to have gasoline in it here in order to contend it.
Okay. And those fuses are the bigger fuses, right?
Those are dummy fuses, those I can, yeah,
They're not hooked to the launch control thing?
they're hooked, but they can't go off.
So, going back to what Craig just said about this transmitter, you had a white garbage bag with a boombox in it, right?
Yeah, the boombox made a CD, 40 minutes of silence, so I had the boombox playing before I left that way, and then the song would come on after, and then splitter software to make
Real loud?
the boombox isn't loud at all, the computer was loud on it, that part of it,
Okay.
but the boombox had LEDs, so you could actually see through
on there. James, anything else you can think of, if I put guys in that apartment that I need to be aware of? Did you cook up any explosives? All I'm saying here is nothing that's going to go boom.
Oh, that's the bullets. Yeah, that's not really anything.
Yeah, you didn't make any ammonium nitrate, you didn't make any high explosives.
No, I mean, I really don't
So, if I go off using the James, anything else you can think of, what I would be concerned about?
Well, the music still playing, it'd be loud.
Is there anything attached to your computer? Any wires or anything running to your computer?
No,
And the gasoline in the 2-liter bottle, that was going to be just, were there fuses going into that? I couldn't really see.
those are just to make fumes.
So the fuse lit once everything went?
For the record, the prosecution just finished publishing Exhibit P-TR-1023A. At this time, Ms. Gerlings, would you collect the individual copies of 1023-B, P-TR-1023-B, that be in the transcript, please? And while she's doing that, would counsel please approach? Members of the jury, I need to give you a limiting instruction. The recording that you just heard, which is People's Exhibit P-TR-1023A, contained some statements by Detective Apple and Special Agent Gumbiner in terms of the questions that they were asking. You need to know that those questions, those statements by the Detective Apple, and the Special Agent Gumbiner were allowed for the limited purpose of placing in context the defendant's answers. And similarly, yesterday, you watched a videotape of an interview conducted by Detective Mel and Detective Apple. Any statements or questions by those two detectives in that videotaped interview were allowed for the limited purpose of placing in context the defendant's statements. So the statements that were made out of court by those detectives in the videotaped interview yesterday and the audio recording that you just heard today are not allowed and have not been admitted for their truth. Does everybody understand that? And everybody's nodding their head yes. Okay. You are to consider those questions and statements only for the limited purpose that I indicated to you that they have been allowed. You are to consider those questions and statements for no other purpose. Understood? And everyone again is nodding their head yes. Great. Thank you. All right. Mr. Orman, you may proceed.
Thank you. Just a few questions left, Special Agent Gumbiner, based on what we heard, and I want to just clarify a couple things. At one point, the defendant talks about making napalm by mixing together styrofoam and gasoline. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
What is napalm?
Napalm is a jelly-like substance, jelly-like gas that's very flammable that sticks to whatever it's placed to.
And is that a way to actually make napalm, to mix styrofoam and gasoline?
Yes, it is.
There is a discussion in the conversation about some type of launch control box on top of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Do you recall that?
Yeah, we refer to that as the pyrotechnic firing box.
Okay. Can we please put up 4144? And actually, and if we could go to 4145, I want to ask a couple questions about these pictures. All right, so in this picture, based on what he was describing to you, where is the napalm in that?
In the bottom of the jar.
Sort of that, I don't know, what color would you call that?
A greenish-brown sludge.
Okay. And if we could go to 4148, please. And 4162. Okay, now we can see here in this photograph a bicycle. You see that bicycle?
Yes.
And around the corner to, like if you walked to that bicycle and took a right, what would you find there?
That's his kitchen, and his refrigerator would be right behind that wall.
Now, would it be fair to say that you couldn't send someone in there over all that stuff to go take a picture of the refrigerator with that box intact?
Correct.
So would it be fair to say we don't actually have a picture of what that looked like before you guys took care of it?
Correct.
And would it also be fair to say that the way you took care of it was to blow it up?
Yes, it would.
You talked to the defendant about a mortar and pestle. Remember that?
Yes.
Where is that in this picture? If you can see it.
Hold on.
Yeah, and please use the microphone and the pointer.
Actually, I don't see it in this photo.
Okay. It's sort of in the middle there, sort of hidden behind something?
It should be.
Yeah. And then there was you can sit down again. There was a discussion also of, in addition to this box on top of the refrigerator that you can't see, a second thing, a launch control system with a remote control behind the plant on the table. And we'll see a picture of that at a later time. But is that launch control device that the defendant was talking about with the remote control behind a plant on the table visible in this picture?
Yes, it is.
Where is that?
So it's right in the middle, and you can see it right here. It's the launch control box. There's actually two of them. You can't see the other one in this picture.
I want to just ask you a couple more questions about the booby trap in the doorway. Was that set up in a way where a person could set that, step over it, and then safely exit the apartment?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Let me see if anyone has any further questions. Nobody does. Your Honor, I have nothing further on direct examination.
Ms. Spengler, do you have any cross-examination? You may proceed.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to start out by talking about your discussion with Mr. Holmes at the city jail the afternoon of July 20th. Okay? Now, you talked about his demeanor. Now, you're aware that he had been sitting at the headquarters close by since early in the morning hours of July 20th. Is that right?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And you described him, I think, as tired,
Yes.
quiet,
Yes.
soft-spoken at times.
Yes.
His demeanor was matter of fact.
Sure.
Is that, okay. He wasn't overly proud or excited.
No.
Is that an agreement? He wasn't overly proud or excited?
Correct.
Okay. And when the discussion that you and Detective Apple was over, the discussion you were having with Mr. Holmes was over, he went back to a blank stare. Is that right?
I don't recall.
And you didn't promise Mr. Holmes anything in order to, for him to answer your questions, like a promise of leniency, correct?
No, we were there to talk to him about the officer safety and public safety around his apartment.
So there was no promise of leniency that was made to Mr. Holmes in exchange for him answering your questions.
No.
Okay. And you also explained to Mr. Holmes before you started asking him questions, well, let me strike that. As you mentioned about public safety, that was explained to him beforehand, correct?
Correct. When we entered to talk to him, we said we were there just to talk to him about his apartment and the safety of the public around the apartment and the officers that were dealing with the apartment and what was inside.
As well as men and children in the area. Excuse
Everybody.
me, women and children in the area.
Correct.
And Mr. Holmes answered all of your questions,
Yes, he did.
and there was no question that he refused to answer.
No, he did not.
Now I want to step back in time to your work at the theater on Mr. Holmes' car, the white Hyundai, parked in the rear of the theater. If we could show Prosecution Exhibit 2986, which has already been admitted.
Yes, please.
Okay, so we can see the white Hyundai to the on the sort of right of the exhibit, and we're now looking at People's 2986, and you recognize the car, of course?
Yes.
Okay. And you arrived, and you and the Arapahoe County Bomb Squad started working on the car in the early morning hours of July 20th?
Yes.
Okay. And that was around probably 2 a.m., 3 a.m.?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you had not spoken with Mr. Holmes at that point, right?
No, I had not.
And your work on the car, in order to determine whether there were any devices that you needed to be concerned about within the car, that wasn't as a result of Mr. Holmes telling anyone that his car was rigged or had any explosives in it, right?
I believe he mentioned that he had IEDs to the arresting officers, and that's why we took the precautions to search the vehicle.
And that was at the apartment, but there was a precaution to search the vehicle, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And you weren't present when Mr. Holmes was arrested. You don't know exactly what he said to the arresting officer, right?
No, it was relayed to me by the officers on scene.
Now, the work that you and the Arapahoe County Bomb Squad did on the car, that was all recorded through that bomb robot that was used on the car, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And when I say recorded, I mean video recorded.
Correct, from the robot camera.
And you mentioned earlier that there were a few bags in the car. I think there was a duffel bag and a black and white backpack, or excuse me, black and blue backpack. Now, no explosives were found in the backpack in Mr. Holmes' car, correct?
No,
Okay. And no explosives or incendiary devices were found at all within the car, correct?
there was a 5-gallon gas container with a little gas, and that was it, but it was not improvised, it was just a gas container.
Like a red gas container that we would put gasoline in to keep in our car if we ran out of gas.
Correct.
Okay. But you had the opportunity to look inside the car to see some of the contents of the car while you were working on the car in those early morning hours, correct?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. And you didn't see any sleeping bags or tents in that car, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay. You didn't see a big quantity of food or any coolers in that car?
No, ma'am, I did not.
You didn't see a passport in that car?
No,
You didn't see any cash in that car?
not to my recollection.
And the car, as far as you know, was not moved from the time that Mr. Holmes was arrested in the very early morning hours of July 20th, correct?
To my knowledge, the car had not moved.
Okay, so that was the way the car had been parked when Mr. Holmes parked the car?
Correct, behind the theater.
Okay. Nose into the sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to step forward to the time that you spent at Mr. Holmes' apartment at 1690 Paris Street, but before I do that, I want to talk with you a bit about your background in education.
Okay.
Now, you began with the FBI in 1999,
Correct.
and you graduated from college in 1994, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So you began with the FBI about 6 years following your graduation from college.
Yes, I did.
And your degree from college was not a degree in science, correct?
Correct.
It was not a degree in chemistry,
No.
not a degree in forensic chemistry
No.
or engineering,
No.
not a degree in chemical engineering.
No, it was in business.
It was in business, okay. And no advanced degree, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. You attended the hazardous device school in Alabama once you were employed by the FBI?
That's correct.
And that is a school that's a required attendance for everyone in the country who becomes a certified bomb technician, right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's a 6-week course?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that's run by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the FBI?
It's run jointly with us and the United States Army.
Okay. And you described earlier that you're taught how to render safe devices or suspected devices at the school?
Yes.
And by rendering safe, what that means is really to take the suspected device or hazardous material and to destroy it. Is that right?
No. In layman's terms, it's to defuse the device. We don't always have to destroy the IED or the incendiary device. Our attempt is to defuse it and keep as much evidence as possible.
Okay. And you also learn about robot operations at the school as well.
Correct.
That school was not, and is not associated with a National Fire Academy in Maryland, right?
No, it's not.
It's not a course in fire investigation.
No, ma'am, it is not.
I shouldn't say course, it's not a school in fire investigation.
No, it's not.
Now I want to take you to your time when you arrived at Paris Street. You arrived at approximately 6:30 in the morning,
Correct.
And that was following your work at the theater?
Yes.
And when you arrived on scene, you weren't the only FBI supervisor that was on scene?
I'm not a supervisor, I'm just a special agent. There was a assistant special agent in charge that was on scene as well. He was the supervisor.
The Adams County Bomb Squad was on scene when you arrived?
Yes, ma'am.
And the Denver Bomb Squad was at the apartment when you arrived?
I believe so, yes. Or they arrived shortly thereafter.
And some of your tasks, excuse me, some of the tasks that you had at the apartment, excuse me, included coordinating the FBI resources.
Correct.
Also communicating between the various agencies that were on the scene or at the apartment.
Correct.
You also assisted in collecting evidence later on
Yes, I did.
and assisted in getting that evidence or those items recovered from the apartment to the lab in Virginia.
Mostly coordinating, but yes.
So you were a busy man on this scene at the apartment.
Yes, ma'am.
And prior to your arrival at the apartment at 6:30 a.m., by the time you arrived, the Aurora Police Department SWAT team had already been through the apartment building. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And the robot operations at the apartment had already begun.
Yes, ma'am.
And the robot operations, or the robot that went into the apartment, was run by the Adams County Bomb Squad.
Yes, ma'am.
And you did not actually enter into the apartment until the following day at about 3:30.
Correct.
And I mean 3:30 p.m.
The following day on Saturday,
July 21st.
I believe it was around 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay. And by that time, the frying pan had already been removed.
Yes.
The cooler had been removed.
I'm sorry, I don't think the frying pan had, the thermos had been removed.
Okay. The jars that we saw in those photos, those had been removed.
When we entered the apartment, no, they had not.
Okay.
We manually removed those.
You were part of the removal of those items?
There were multiple bomb technicians on scene, and we were all part of removing the explosive hazards from the apartment, sampling, and then taking the explosive hazards to the demo range.
Now, ultimately, the thermos and the frying pan, that was disassembled and removed by the robot safely, correct?
Correct.
And all of the devices were disarmed, either through manual work or through the robot,
Correct.
and none of them ever exploded.
No, ma'am.
Now, I want to talk about what you were able to see before you entered the apartment from the doorway. And you mentioned earlier that you were able to see into the apartment from the vantage of the doorway and see the frying pan and see the cooler, as well as some of those black plastic spheres. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to approach with what I will now mark. As Defendant's Trial Exhibit 2, three, and 4. And I'm showing the prosecution what has been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 2, 3, and 4.
stipulate to the admission.
Okay, are you moving their admission?
I am.
All right, do you want to move their admission now? All right, defendants exhibits D-TR-2, 3, and 4 are admitted, and you may publish them whenever you get to that point. Go ahead, you may approach.
Thank you.
If we could publish defendants 2, please, which is 453. Do you recognize defendants 2?
Yes,
Okay. And that's a view into apartment number 10 at 1690 Paris from the doorway?
correct.
Okay. And one of the first things you can see from the doorway by the couch is the frying pan and the thermos that you described earlier, correct?
I don't believe the thermos is in the photo. I think it's already been taken out of the picture.
You see the frying pan?
Yes,
Okay. And that's where the thermos was also located?
yes,
Okay. You also can see from the doorway a number of soda bottles, Sprite bottles. Is that right?
yes,
You can also see from that doorway a number of those black plastic shells that are in the first cluster, the middle of the living room.
yes,
You can also see from the doorway, before you enter, the zigzag of white powder.
yes.
And if we could publish Defendant's Exhibit 3. Do you recognize the apartment that's shown in Defendant's Exhibit 3?
Yes,
Okay. And this is a vantage point from the window of the living room?
correct.
Now, there were no devices, no explosives that were hidden behind the couch that you see on the left side of the picture, Defendant's 3, correct?
Behind the couch, no, there was not.
Nothing in any closet,
No.
nothing in the bathroom, no explosive or incendiary device in the bathroom.
He left a blowtorch in the bathroom, but he left a blowtorch in the bathroom, but no device.
And the blowtorch wasn't connected to anything.
No,
Okay, it was just facing out on the bathroom floor.
correct.
And nothing hidden in his bedroom.
No.
I want to talk a bit about the frying pan and the cooler by the couch. If we could look at People's 4858, please. And that's already been published and admitted. Now, on the left side of this photograph, you can see the fishing line coming down at an angle. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, now if we could see People's 4857 and see where that starts from. Now, that tack is next to the door jamb, right?
Correct.
Okay, and that tack is not attached to the door itself.
No, it is not.
Okay, and a door jamb is generally about 4 feet up?
Yes,
Okay, and so we have the line coming down at an angle and attaching to the to the cooler,
the thermos, correct.
the thermos. And so what we don't see is this fishing line down close to the floor, just a few inches off the floor, set up in a horizontal way.
I'm not sure. So the fishing line goes from the door jamb at 4 feet and then goes down to about a foot off the ground attached to the thermos, probably half a foot, 6 inches.
Right, so what we're not seeing is the fishing line next to the floor going across.
In a straight line.
Mhm. And we can take that down, thank you. The white powder in the zigzag pattern at the front entrance, that is not a chemical that's commonly used in explosives, correct?
Correct.
Okay. It is not a chemical where if you step on it, it's going to ignite or explode.
No, it would not.
And the thermos and the frying pan contraption next to the couch, that did not fall over when the door to the apartment was opened by the bomb robot, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that did not fall over when the robot entered or tried to enter into the apartment, right?
The robot it didn't move that far in order to trip the tripwire.
And when all of the windows were broken out in the apartment, nothing moved, it didn't trigger.
Correct.
I want to talk about the launch control and the firework initiating device that was located on the top of the refrigerator. Okay. Both of those, or all three of those, are pyrotechnic or fireworks firing boxes, correct?
Correct.
And so as an example of that, if you go to a fireworks show and you are going to set off fireworks, they would be sort of connected into those initiating systems and then could be released one at a time.
Correct.
So I want to start off talking about the launch control boxes that we saw in the middle of the living room. And I'll hand the prosecution, which has been marked as defendants exhibits 5 and 6.
Stipulate the admission, Your Honor.
Are you moving their admission, Ms. Spengler?
I am.
Okay. Defense trial exhibits D-TR-5 and 6 are admitted and may be published, and yes, you may approach.
Thank you.
We could publish defendants exhibit 5, which is 840. You see the box to the launch control in the middle of that cluster on the living room floor, and that's like a receiver, right?
Correct.
Okay, and so you would need to take a remote, point the remote at the receiver in order to initiate an electrical charge, which could, in the firework example, set off the firework, right?
Correct.
Okay, and a remote was located in the apartment, right?
Yes, it was.
But if we could put up defendants exhibit 6 or 461. Remote was actually located on the dining room table, which is on the other side of the room that we were just looking at, correct?
Correct.
This is almost in the kitchen.
Correct.
So in order for those receivers in the living room to be turned on, someone would have to get that remote from the dining room table, bring it back over to the receiver, get into line of sight with that box or receiver, and then press the buttons on the remote.
Well, the receiver actually was on.
The box was on,
Correct.
meaning the power was on, so there were flashing red lights.
Correct.
Okay, but in order to start any electrical charge within that box, we would need to get the remote, bring it back over, get it into line of sight, and press the remote like a TV remote.
That's correct.
Okay. And regarding the firework system on top of the refrigerator, in order for that firework system to be set off, that remote was actually taken down 3 flights of stairs and placed by a dumpster. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Along with a remote control car.
Correct.
Okay, and we'll hear more about that later. There's nothing about these firework systems in and of themselves that are incendiary, right?
Just them of themselves? No.
Okay. Now, in your experience, you've certainly dealt with a variety of devices in different situations, right?
Correct.
Okay. And there are certainly a variety of explosive devices, and they can be arranged in a variety of ways.
Correct.
You can have a planted booby trap where that's hidden, that nobody could see, right?
Correct.
You could have pressure plates, where if a pressure plate is initiated, that could initiate an improvised device.
Correct.
You could have a timed event, meaning that a bomb or an explosive device could be timed to go off.
Correct.
You could have a movement-operated device, where just somebody's movement could trigger an explosive or incendiary device to go off.
Correct.
And as we mentioned, there are certain powders that if you just step on could cause an explosion or a fire.
Correct.
And nothing was set on a timer in that apartment, right?
Correct.
And there was no pressure plate within that apartment, right?
No, there was not.
There was no chemical put anywhere that just stepping on it would cause it to explode or ignite.
The booby trap, the potassium permanganate and glycerin, if you stepped on that and those two mixed, it would ignite.
If you put your foot into the frying pan and knocked over the cooler.
Correct.
Nothing set up that could be triggered by movement.
Well, again, the booby trap, if you moved into the apartment and hit the fishing line, that would cause the whole apartment to explode or catch on fire.
And you can actually improvise those initiating devices to work off of a timer, right?
The ones that he was utilizing, I'm sure it can be done. I don't have the knowledge. I'm not familiar with both of those initiating systems.
And that wasn't done. Those were not working off of a timer.
No, they were not.
During the conversation that you were having and the questions that you were asking of Mr. Holmes later on July 20th, he told you that there was a fireworks system or initiating system on the top of his refrigerator, right?
Correct.
And indeed there was, right?
Correct.
And he told you that there were some plastic spheres in the living room that he tried to have, that were contained gunpowder and gasoline, right?
Correct.
And you found those.
Yes, we did.
He told you about the glass jars and exactly where they were located, right?
Yes.
And you found them where he said they would be located.
Yes.
He told you about the mortar and pestle jar or bowl with the cut-up magnesium and the improvised thermite, and you found that bowl.
Correct.
He told you about that white powder at the front door, and of course you found that white powder at the front door.
Correct.
He told you about some half shells, half plastic shells along the living room wall, and you found those half shells along the living room wall.
Correct.
He told you about the blowtorch not hooked up to anything in the bathroom, and you found that blowtorch in the bathroom.
Correct.
He told you that there was a container of gasoline, a red container of gasoline in the kitchen, and you found a red container of gasoline in the kitchen.
Correct.
He told you that he'd used a metal bowl when he was combining styrofoam and gasoline, and you found that metal bowl.
Correct.
We talked earlier about the myriad of things that you did during the investigation, including collecting evidence, arranging for evidence to be sent away, as well as communicating between the different agencies. And certainly either side should have access to evidence, right?
Correct.
Okay. And evidence doesn't belong to one side or the other.
Correct.
And you and your agency were one of the first that were on scene at the apartment, right?
One of the first, yes. Aurora PD and Aurora Fire were there as well.
Okay, as well as at the theater.
Correct.
And you participated in evidence documentation?
On the documentation side, I don't believe I did. I was kind of overarching, making sure everything was being communicated and handled.
Okay, but collection?
I didn't do any of the collection or sampling. I turned the apartment, to my knowledge, I turned the apartment over to our evidence response team. When we were done with the explosive hazard, we had a chemist and an examiner from our explosive unit that were flown down to do the collection on scene of the explosives and the liquids and all the incendiary ingredients that we had, and they collected it for sampling.
Okay, and I thought that earlier you had mentioned in your testimony that you had collected some of the items the following day in apartment number 10.
I was tasked with coordinating the evidence collection.
But, and you've offered expert testimony today, right?
Correct.
And when I reached out and asked to talk to you, you declined to interview with us.
Correct.
Judge, I have no further questions.
Okay, do you have any redirect? Okay.
And Your Honor, if I could ask to put up Defense Exhibit 5, please, which has been admitted. I saw it for a second, I think. Okay.
There you go.
Special Agent Governor, I asked you about the mortar and pestle. Counsel for the defendant asked you about the mortar and pestle. This is Defense Exhibit 5, which was admitted. Can we see the mortar and pestle in this picture?
Yes, we can.
And where is it?
Right in the middle on the white next to the two.
Can you just quickly point it out with that thing?
It's right here.
Okay, thank you. You can see it again. Ms. Spangler asked you some questions about the explosive or incendiary devices not going off.
Correct.
When they were rendered safe by the professionals at the scene. Is that part of the idea behind rendering safe, not to set them off?
Yes, it is. That's our goal.
And do you go through training to do that?
Yes, we do.
Ms. Spengler asked you a question about the booby trap device not being set off when the door was opened to the apartment. Do you recall that question?
Yes, I do.
Now, do you have training, just as a law enforcement officer with the FBI, of entering potentially hazardous and dangerous locations?
Yes, we do.
And would a police officer, an FBI agent, anyone involved in law enforcement in the United States of America, entering a place like that, just stand in the doorway?
Objection to the form of the question, leading argumentative.
Sustain as to the form of the question. You may rephrase.
In your experience, would a police officer, federal agent, entering that apartment just remain in the doorway?
No, we would not.
Why not?
There's a term for it called the funnel of death. That's the last place that you want to stand if you're making.
Objection.
Overruled?
Please continue.
For a law enforcement officer to stand in a doorway, it's one of the most dangerous areas that you could stand in if you're making entry into an apartment or a residence. So we're trained not to do so.
So if you were entering that apartment in some type of emergency or hazardous situation, where would you go?
Once we breach the door,
Yeah.
we would stand back away from the door frame.
And if you entered? If you had to enter?
If you had to enter, you would enter and you would, what they call is, you would drive the wall, or you would enter a two-man team and you would enter the apartment very quickly and get out of the doorway, meaning entering the apartment and looking for a threat.
And
Probably
doing so, would that have set off that tripwire device?
that would have. If you were entering the apartment in that way, it would have.
And with the lighting that was present in the apartment, without a spotlight from a bomb computer shining right on it, like we can see in those pictures, do you think a police officer entering that apartment would have been able to see that fishing line to avoid it?
Objection to the form of the question, speculation, 401, 403.
I didn't hear the last part.
Relevance.
Overruled, it is relevant based on the cross-examination. You open the door, so it comes in the 401 and 402. The probative value is not substantially outweighed by any dangers outlined in Rule 403, so it's admissible under 403. And in terms of speculation, it doesn't call for speculation based on this witness's expertise. So you may ask the question again.
If a police officer entering that apartment in an emergency situation were to, well, would they have been able to see that tripwire without the flashlight or spotlight from that bomb robot shining on it?
Objection.
Why don't you rephrase the question? I'll sustain to the form. Instead of asking whether someone else could have seen it, you can ask if he believes that would have been visible.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, entering that apartment with the lighting that was present, without the spotlight from the bomb robot to illuminate the fishing line, would that fishing line have been visible?
Most likely not.
And if the defendant's description of what he set up, and with the gasoline in the apartment, if a police officer entering that apartment, not seeing that fishing line, had set that off, what would have happened to that police officer or anybody else?
Judge, objection.
Overruled based on the cross-examination, it's appropriate. You can answer.
If the officer would have initiated the tripwire, the hypergolic reaction would have caused sparks and flames, which would have hit the carpet that was saturated with gas and oil, which would in turn have made the whole apartment explode, killing or maiming whoever was inside at the time.
You talked about gasoline, and the defendant talked about gasoline. Did you smell gasoline when you were in there?
Yes. It was all over the carpet.
When you were talking with the defendant, did he make any statements along the lines of, you know what, it's not really explosive, it's not really going to start a fire, it's all just for show?
No, he did not.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, any recross? There are questions from the jury, quite a few. You know what, it might be most efficient to take our lunch break and have us go through all these. Is the witness available after the lunch break?
Yes.
All right, so why don't we do that? Why don't we take our lunch break? Let's take an hour and a half. The lawyers and I will take a little less than that. Folks, I want to remind you that you cannot discuss anything going on in the proceedings during the breaks. You cannot start forming opinions about the case. In other words, you cannot start deliberating privately about the case. You cannot obtain any information about the case from outside sources. You cannot do any investigation or research about the case. You cannot visit any locations mentioned in the trial. You cannot obtain any information from media reports about the case. And you cannot talk to anyone or allow anyone to talk to you about the case. If you hear people talking about the case, remove yourself from that location immediately and then report to my staff if you inadvertently overhear something that you need to talk to me. All you have to do is tell my staff that you need to talk to me. Don't say what it's about. All those admonishments that I have been giving you are extremely important and continue to apply. It may be tempting for you to want to talk about what's happening in the courtroom. You have to resist that temptation. It may also be tempting to want to start forming opinions about the case. Again, that would be improper. You need to keep an open mind. You need to remember the presumption of innocence that remains with the defendant throughout the trial and that must be given effect by the jury throughout the trial. And you also need to remember what I said to you before, and in fact, I've said it multiple times. Sympathy and prejudice cannot affect any of your decisions in this case, either sympathy or prejudice for one side or the other. All right, all of the admonishments apply during the lunch break. Have a good lunch. I'll see you back here in about an hour and a half. Thank you. It's like the jury has left the courtroom now. What I propose, folks, is that we take our lunch break and we take an hour and 15 minutes and I have you back 15 minutes earlier so we can go through all these questions. Is that okay with everyone, the people?
Are you sure that's only 15 minutes worth of questions, Your Honor?
I think we can fly through these in 15 minutes, yeah. All right, is that okay with you, Ms. Spengler? Yes. Okay, all right, thank you. The court will be in recess then. I'll see you back here in an hour and 15. Thank you.